Hello, Snugglebugs. Well, in today's video, we're going to go over the top 5 decks to use before the Titans expansion comes out in a few weeks, starting at number 5, which is kind of surprising to me because it's been at the top now, to be fair. 52.69% is pretty good nonetheless. We have the pure Paladin. Deck list hasn't really changed in a really long time, but I just figured we'd go over kind of what decks if you want to climb for the last month until the new expansion comes in. As you can see here, I do not have Anachronis. I'll scroll up a little, I guess, here to show you that what the last few cards in the deck are with the Leviathan and the Light Ray. And really, Paladin is just always this really good tempo deck with the early game, mid game, and then a couple late game bombs, some mana cheat, and then of course Countess to try to find some finishers. The deck is pretty good, obviously, with the 52.69%. Maybe we'll throw that in the middle. And it's honestly pretty easy to play. It's a little legendary heavy, and I'll say this for all the decks in this list where a new expansion's coming out. I'm not going to recommend crafting anything unless you have a lot of extra dust lying around, and maybe swap out a couple cards if you don't have it. Let me know in the comments down below if you'd like any suggestions on possibly what to swap out, what might work for these decks. But yeah, that's deck number 5. At number 4, we have the Relic Demon Hunter, one of my favorites. Now, I've never played the version with the enchanters in it. They're pretty good. I'm guessing they're in here for things like AoEs or your Relic of Extinctions in order to hit big minions and take them down. And again, sorry, my thing might not be perfect, but we'll just kind of pick that up. So you can see the bottom. The very bottom, we also have your endgame Zhylog Artificer. Other than maybe these enchanters that, again, I have never played, as pretty obvious to tell. With the fact that I don't have them. The deck hasn't changed too much. We have a few videos on the channel if you'd like to go check those out. But it's overall a try to survive until you get some of your pop-off turns, some of your Relic Vaults into your Relic Phantasms. Sorry if the snaps were loud. It was close to the old microphone, eh? But yeah, and then you kind of try to get to the end game, mess with your opponents a bit. You get some lifesteal with the Silver Moon Arcanus and the Unleash Fel, especially in the late game. We've seen some turns where you've played that and people have gained like 20 health, or we've gained 20 health in one shot. You have Artificer Zymox and a bunch of draw power with the Relic of Dimensions here in order to get mana discounts to play big bombs, and you just sort of overwhelm your opponent sometimes with really massive Relic Phantasms if they don't have board clear after board clear. Now, we kind of have two decks tied for top 3 because the Evolved Shaman with a 53.1% win rate, and there's also going to be Totem Shaman on the list because it's very close with just over 53% win rate as well, and they're both Shaman, so I figured we'd kind of group those together. But here in the Evolved Shaman, I think it's kind of taken up popularity more so in the last couple of weeks, maybe month, than it has. Apologies, I haven't been in the meta as much as I was for the rest of the expansion. But it's kind of following the similar playlist as almost Totem Shaman. You play a bunch of stuff out early, but the difference is instead of overwhelming your opponent with damage and pushing for face a lot, you just try to get wide boards out so you can hit them with the Primordial Wave, you get your Baroness Vage, and you just sort of swarm the board and evolve them. Pack the house, etc. It can be really good. Also can be RNG dependent, even if you open really well and you play really well. If your evolves are unlucky and you get like really bad drops from, say, your Pack the House, if it turns into a 7 or 8 cost minion that's like a 2/2 or something crazy low like that, which there are 8 cost 2/2 is probably extreme, but I know we got an 8 cost 5/8 like a 3/3/5 mana or 7 mana one time, and it was really bad for us and we ended up losing the game. But that's what happens. Sometimes you really high roll and you get like a good evolve early. Sometimes you get a whole board that's not so good. And I won't go over Totem Shaman too much with the 53.4% win rate because, like I said, hasn't really changed a ton. This one is pretty simple to play, very simple to play, pretty cheap to make as well, with really 2 legendaries in it. 3 legendaries in it, sorry. All of them relatively important. I feel like you could probably swap out Grand Totem for something else because, like, it's obviously really good when you get it to stick, but I don't know. Rotgill is honestly probably the most important one here. Stonewright can just really help push damage if you have a bunch of totems on the board early. Again, probably more so than even some of the other decks on this list that have been tweaked the last few weeks. Looking at this deck list, Totem Shaman hasn't actually changed like at all pretty much since the expansion came out, with a few changes maybe. Looking at it, actually, I was going to say a few changes with the mini set, but I actually don't think that's even right. I think it's pretty much the exact same. Cheap, easy to play, really fast to climb with. So if your goal is just to hit Legend or as high as you can this season before the expansion comes out, I would recommend the Totem Patrolman. The number 2 deck on our list here, which is actually really surprising to me, this was just starting to gain popularity, not to repeat myself, sorry, but I kind of stopped playing a couple weeks ago, and again, apologies about that, but things are just, anyway, I can't get into it, but yeah, in Rage Warrior, almost 50, basically a 54% win rate, was just kind of becoming popular when I was leaving, and the deck looks very interesting. As you can see, we have some late game bombs. There's a few cards I'm missing because it wasn't a deck I ever thought I would want to play. But, you know, the idea is you get minions out on the board that get damaged. You buff them with the imbued axe here. But really, I think the biggest piece that is possibly hard, like this is one of the higher skill ceiling decks on this list, I would argue, is you really want to get Sun Fury Champion and your 2 Anima Extractors, and you play a fire spell, do a bunch of AoE damage, buff like your Decimator, Ogre, Remoria, or Gromosh in your hand, and just sort of punch them in the face really, really hard. And win the game in 1 or 2 smashes. The number 1 deck, probably no surprise to anyone, the Hound Hunter, big beast hunter, if you will, depending on how you want to look at it. There's actually not that many big beasts in here. Strangely, ever since the Hound came out, it kind of started as like, oh, this would be good for the deck to get some survivability, but then it kind of just became a, hey, we can spam like 12 of these Hounds per game, not die, and effectively overwhelm our opponents with these beasts. And I say no surprise because A, I'm sure you've seen it, and B, it seems like 2.5 years, it feels like, between Pure Paladin and Beast Hunter has almost always been at the top of all of these lists. Doesn't really change too much, but we'll kind of scroll down just so you can see the Stranglethorn Heart and King Crush that are at the bottom. But either way, with an almost 56% win rate, it towers above the other decks by at least 2%, and it is objectively just the best deck in the game right now. Barely has any decks that it performs poorly against, so that's probably also part of the reason why it does the overall win rate obviously is so high. One thing I would like to say about this meta, though, again, I'll admit, not so much playing in it, but looking at these win rate percentages, all Diamond through Legend in like decks over 1,000 games, there's actually, like, I think almost 15 different decks, different archetypes between aggro, combo, tempo, some control aspects in here. I guess if you want to call it control with certain things. Maybe control is the one that's lacking the most, but there's different variations, all above a 50% win rate. And then honestly, there's quite a few that are like 49, so almost 50%. So as much as I wish the Hound Hunter could be pulled down a touch, I feel like what's happening and what's been happening back and forth these last few years is because Pure Paladin and Hound Hunter are so powerful that really it's like if you change one, the other one just kind of takes its place. And I don't think, other than for a while when Death Knight was just towering above the rest, but partially because it was a new class, and I think they were just trying to get the balance right. Those decks have just sort of always been at the top, and I think that's sort of the issue they're having is balancing out really between those classes. But honestly, it feels like a decent meta. I'm not seeing any super crazy outliers. I won't dive deep into that because I know there's other YouTubers who do like super deep meta analysis. Maybe the Druid could use some love with the post or with the below 40% win rate in standard. But if you enjoy these kind of videos, thank you very much for watching. Please hit the subscribe button and the notification bell so you can be notified when more go up. And hopefully we'll be seeing more of each other in the next in the coming days before the Titans expansion. Have a great rest of your day.